Very nice. What's happening? I need to oil the network. Something's creaking there. I don't know how many people you would call real movie stars in the classic, giant, enormous sense of the word, and how many of those are actually first-rate actors. But I guess Burt Lancaster is undeniably both an extraordinary film actor and a big star in the biggest sense. It's dull to listen to names of people's movies, but his are so remarkable, a number of them. Just to see them all at once, it's amazing. I'm not going to read them all to you, but they include The Killers and Sorry, Wrong Number and The Rainmaker and Sweet Smell of Success and Come Back Little Sheba and The Rose Tattoo and From Here to Eternity and Elmer Gantry and Birdman of Alcatraz and Judgment at Nuremberg. Shall I go on? He was in most of those. Won an Oscar for one of them. I think you probably know which one. Anyway, the list goes on, and if I do, he probably won't. So here he is, Burt Lancaster. That's more shoulders than we've had on the show since Joan Crawford was here. Wait a minute. What am I saying?
I haven't gotten a hand like that since From Here to Eternity either.
I was thinking about I read a lot of things about you over this past week, and one of them had the story that you were actually discovered in an elevator, and you never know if those things are real or not. They sometimes get into publicity releases, and that the man who discovered you just saw these two shoulders blocking his view of the world. And is that true? Was it an elevator?
Yes, that's true.
First acting job?
Well, not my first acting job. It's the first time the first time it led to doing a Broadway play. But I'd actually been in show business virtually all of my life.
Right, that I knew too. You actually had a dream come true. I don't know how pleasant the dream was, but the idea of running away from school and joining a circus is, I guess, literally what you did.
Yes, that's right, yes.
Can you?
Shall I describe it?
Yeah, would you? I want to know how that...
Well, I was going to NYU, New York University, the School of Education down on 4th Street in Washington Square. And I had a basketball scholarship to the school. I was a graduate of DeWitt Clinton High School. I hope no enemies like commerce are here today. Anyway, I went to school there. I was quite a good student, and I thought I was going to college to learn something. But like a lot of the kids today, they're finding out they're not learning very much. And that turned out to be my problem also. I sat in a classroom with some 150 students, most of them from the coal mines of West Virginia, who were all going to be football players, and we read newspapers. And when I'd get up and raise my hand and started to ask a question, the professor would say, "Lancaster, just take your notes and be quiet." Well, I didn't like that. I thought, well, I'm not going to learn much here. So when I finished my sophomore year, I went off and joined a circus. I got $3 a week in my board as an apprentice, and it was one of the most beautiful times of my life.
I guess almost every kid has dreamed of that. I didn't. I was an odd kid. When I was at a circus, I dreamed of running back to school, but I was... it's whenever I've been around a circus, I've kind of felt sorry for the people, or if you're on the midway or the sideshow, it looks like
I'll tell you something interesting about a circus. The first circus I was with was called a mud show. And the expression comes from the fact that it was a motorized show, and when it would rain, the trucks would be stuck out in the field. And we'd have to get the elephants, or the bulls as they call them, to pull us off, as differentiated from a show like the Ringling Show, which is a railroad show, where they use huge tractors to get the things off. And that first circus I was with, there was a total of 25 people who represented the performers and the working men who did all the shows. They did 2 and 3 acts. It was a little one-ring circus, like a European circus. And when we'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, have a standing breakfast, we'd go to the next town, we'd all chip in and put up the big top and drive the stakes and do all of that. And then it was all over, we'd put up our own rigging, my partner and I, which was a horizontal bar rigging, and we'd practice. And then at 11:30, we'd have something to eat, and at 1 o'clock, we'd start the show. We'd do the show. Around 4 o'clock when the show was over, we'd go back and practice again. Then we'd get ready for the night performance, and then in the evening, we'd take everything down after the show and pack it up and get ready to move the next day. Now, that first show, in which, as I say, I got $3 a week in my board, I thought, this is marvelous. It was one great, wonderful, happy little family. The next show I was with was a show where I got $35 a week, so I'd made it. I was now what they call a Johnny-come-lately. First time I was a 1st of May, which is the expression for someone who first goes into the circus.
Oh,
but the
what?
second, a 1st of May.
Oh, 1st of May.
Then but the second show I was with was called a grift show. And in the midway of the circus where the carnival was, they used to have games of chance where they used to fleece the people. And that show was a dirty show, and the food was terrible, and my whole illusions about circuses were shattered after that.
Did you ever get in a Hey Rube? Is that, do they
Yes, I did get in a Hey
expression?
Rube. Down in Leeds, Alabama, in a small town, I was with a show called the Honest Bill Newton Show.
That's where you'd get into one, all right.
We hadn't been paid in 11 weeks.
We should tell what a Hey Rube is. I just happen to know from my circus background.
Well, a Hey Rube is when some kind of trouble starts in the show. Circus people are very peculiar. They're a very strange, kind of rather exotic group of people. Most of them come from different places all over the world. They cling together. Everybody outside is what we call a gill. In a certain kind of way, the enemy. And the moment there's any trouble, you yell, "Hey, Rube," everybody in the circus bands together. They don't care what the cause is, who was at fault. You just gather like a family, like a little army, and protect yourself.
And do you hit everybody who isn't one of you?
Yes, you do.
I heard that there's some signal, or some, not a signal, but a sign, like if you put a handkerchief around your neck, or maybe it's different with different carnivals and circuses.
It could be. Maybe times have changed, too.
So you know whom to strike. What was your specialty act like? Did you...
Well, if you've ever seen the gymnastic work in a gymnasium on a horizontal bar,
Have I ever seen it?
well, then imagine 3 of these bars.
I was a state
Or
champion
5 of
gymnast.
them. Were you really?
Yeah. Why did you have to draw back so far? Like, were you...
No, you look like you might be. You
Yeah, I
have
was.
a very fine physique for it.
Yeah, for a 90-pound fellow I ever had.
The lighter you are, the better.
Go ahead, though. Anyway, how did...
Well, horizontal bars. There were 3 of them, and you'd fly, and you know what a giant swing is.
Yep.
You'd go from one bar to the other, and then to the next bar, and so forth. Very dangerous work.
Yeah.
The first time I got a job in the circus was this way. I went down to a place called Petersburg, Virginia, and we met a show called the K Brothers Show. This was the show we worked on. And old man Ketro, which was his real name, said to my little partner Nick and I, he said, "Let's see what you boys can do." We went out, and I was doing a trick called a cutaway between bars, which is a forward somersault. You grab the bar and shoot your body up and come down backwards, turn over, do a half somersault, catch the next bar, then swing on to another half somersault to the other bar.
If you're still conscious.
If you're still conscious. Well, I was so scared and so nervous, as I jumped to the bar, I lost my timing, and as I shot my body out, I grazed my knees on the bar, and it cut my swing back. I swing down. I came down, and I turned over. I reached for the bar. I caught it on my fingertips, but I couldn't hang on. I came up and flew off, and flew about 20 feet out and came down on the ground. Now, my knees were all cut and bleeding. My tights were all torn. I rushed to the bar, jumped again. This time, my timing was all off. Same thing happened, down again. I rushed to the bar the 3rd time, and the old man came over, grabbed me, and he said, "It's all right, son. You got the job."
What, that thing interests me you said about size, though. You're so much bigger than I am. Is your size a drawback, then?
No, as a matter of fact, in horizontal bar work as opposed to trapeze work, trapeze men are small. They're small and tiny and compact. They're men who generally are, somewhere in the area of 125 to 130 pounds. Rather small, 5'5", 5'6", very compact. They look like divers. When you see a big man on the trapeze, he's generally the catcher. He's the one who catches the smaller man. But in horizontal bars, it's a little bit different. You work alone, going from one bar to another. And the taller you are, the more momentum you gather in your swing, the more power you have, the more leverage that you have. So actually, you are what they call more lofty. And it's pretty to watch a tall man on the bars as opposed to a small man whose motions are very quick, but not as graceful looking as a tall man.
Yeah. I'd want to be as tall as possible so I wouldn't have so far to fly, I think. Is there ever such a thing as an act where a guy puts his head in a lion's mouth? You always see that in the cartoons and things, but I've never seen it done.
Well, I tell you something very interesting. I made a film some years ago called Trapeze.
Oh, yeah.
And we worked at the Cirque d'Hiver, the winter circus in Paris. The owners of the Cirque d'Hiver were 2 old pirates, 2 old men called the Buglioni brothers, very well-to-do men who had circuses all over Europe. They came from a very interesting kind of family. They were lion tamers and animal tamers all their lives. And these old men who walked around in very simple clothes and who were multi-millionaires, incidentally, would very often go in and sleep with the lion and do all these kind of mad things. I had to do a scene where I had to be with the lion. I said, no way to get me there with that lion. Now, Mr. Buglioni said, Mr. Lancaster, please. He said, come into the cage. I'll show you how simple it is. I said, nothing doing. I'll stand outside and watch you. I said, I'll fall off the trapeze or anything you want, but I will not get in there with the lion. He said, let me show you something. He went into the tent, took the lion, opened the lion's mouth, and put his head inside of the lion's mouth. He turned to me, he said, you see how simple it is? I said, I'm sorry, you're not going to get me in there. A week later, the real lion tamer who worked in the show did the same trick, and the lion bit his head off.
Isn't that a lovely story, boys and girls? I didn't. I asked for it, and so did he.
There's some computer in me that saved me. Something made me realize I shouldn't do that.
Brother.
Also, I'm a coward, let's face it.
Anyway.
Where lions are concerned.
That's awful.